So there is this push-pull system between sending out lots of connections and then actually refining and paring back a lot of these connections. And Donald Hebb made a sort of a posited sort of a general principle of development of the nervous system, which said that neurons have to sort of fire together to maintain that connection. So if there's a causal relationship, cell A makes cell B fire, then we know we want to keep that connection. There's a nice relationship between it. If there is no relationship between cell A firing and cell B firing, then let's get rid of it. So this is sort of the basis of what's called Hebian plasticity. So here's the visual system we might have from two different eyes projecting to, and this is the lateral geniculate nucleus. This is one of those nuclei in the thalamus, which is one of the relay stations of the visual system going to the visual cortex from the eye. And so initially, all of these guys are synapsing everywhere in the lateral geniculate nucleus, okay? Both left and right eyes. But these guys here receive visual input simultaneously. The light comes across the right eye. It activates these guys. Well, these guys both activate this cell together because there's some convergence of connections to that cell. Okay, so these guys fire. This guy fires. That's great. This guy did not fire because it did not receive an input. So this connection that went to that cell eventually gets paired back. And when these guys fire, they cause this guy to fire, and these guys that crossed over get paired back. And so we get a segregation of inputs onto these cells because these guys fire together and not with these guys. Carlos Schatz did some really amazing work. So this is a retina from a salamander, and is put down on a grid of electrodes. And it turns out the retina spontaneously produces these waves of activity. These are, you can see, this is a calcium image. And you see these waves just traveling down in spontaneous ways. But what they're doing is they're activating all those guys that are next to each other. And that actually encourages all the wiring downstream. So the animal, even in embryos, not getting any visual input, but the visual system spontaneously produces these waves so that it can wire up. And when it comes out of the embryo and gets input, it can kind of see things. You know, it can detect mommy. This is a fascinating experiment where they took the eye of the frog. There's a dorsal to ventral projection into the tectum, which is the thalamus or lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus of the frog. And so the nasal temporal axis of the retina projects the anterior posterior of the tectum. And so over development, you get this nice projections. And so initially, you'll find that these guys, it turns out there are pathways which have all sorts of promoting and suppression of projections. So these guys actually, it doesn't really affect the nasal end of it. Those guys will project to anywhere in the tectum. But the guys in the temporal side will actually prefer to go along certain paths, and that actually causes them to project to these different areas. And then through the refinement, that will actually make these guys project to the other side eventually. So you can actually take the eye out of the frog, and the frog is unlike human in that if you cut the optic nerve will grow back. So they take the eye out, and they actually rotate the eye so that it's 180 degrees out of place. All of those signaling molecules are still in the same place, but then you have the perfect look for that. and it projects back to the tectum, but it's now completely reversed. And so the animal, now they shine a little light over here, and before the animal would stick its tongue out there, and then after reversing the eye, they shine a little light over there to simulate a fly, and its tongue goes this direction. So there is a lot of hard wiring of the projections. Yeah, so presumably it would start to do something, but I'm not sure exactly. The frog may be too hardwired to reverse that. Humans certainly, we'll talk about, can reverse things like that. Yeah. I think evolution, if that's happened to your eye, evolution's given up on you. It's like, we'll try with the next frog.